Have you ever heard someone say your name when no one else was around? Maybe it was just once. Maybe it was more than that. A whisper in the dark. A footstep in the hallway when everyone should be asleep. A shadow in the corner of your eye that disappears the moment you turn to look. Most people brush these moments off. A trick of the light, the wind, their imagination. But sometimes, it's not that simple. There are stories that people carry with them their whole lives. Stories they only tell in whispers, if they tell them at all. Things they saw, things they heard, things they felt deep in their bones that no one else believes. Tonight, we're going to tell you 5 of those stories. Not fiction, not folklore. These are true accounts from people who were never the same afterward. A family tormented by a sound that came from nowhere and everywhere. A young woman whose best friend vanished without a trace. A stranger hiding where no one was supposed to be. A ghost town that came and went like a bad dream. And a videotape that was never meant to be found. These are stories that leave a mark. The kind that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. So turn the lights low. Put your phone down. And listen closely. Because if you hear your name, you might not be alone. Some of these stories have been passed around online. Others were buried in old case files. A few came straight from the people who lived them. But one thing they all have in common is that they were never supposed to happen. Stay until the end. One of these stories has never been explained. Not by police, not by science, not even by the people who witnessed it. It was the fall of 1978 when the Turner family first heard it. They had just moved into an old farmhouse that sat at the end of a dirt road in southern Missouri. A place where the nearest neighbor was half a mile away, and the nights could get so quiet you'd swear the world had stopped moving. Jim Turner was the father. He worked at the mill in town. His wife Linda stayed home with their 2 kids, Tommy and Claire. For the first few weeks, they thought they were lucky. The house was drafty and old, but it was cheap, and it was theirs. They were happy for a little while. The first night it happened, Linda was washing dishes after dinner. The kids were playing with a deck of cards on the living room rug. Jim was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking a cup of coffee. That's when they heard it. A long, low whistle drifting in through the window over the sink. At first, it sounded almost like someone whistling a tune. Just a slow, rising note that held in the air too long. Linda set down her sponge and listened. Jim stood up trying to see outside, but there was nothing there. Just darkness and the wind moving through the dry corn stalks. They didn't think much of it then. Maybe a neighbor, maybe the wind itself. But the next night, it came again. Same time, same low whistle. This time, it moved from the kitchen window to the living room window, like it was circling the house. By the 3rd night, it was no longer a maybe. The whistling would start right after sundown. It would pass along the walls, stopping under each window, as if it was looking for something or someone. Jim started going out on the porch with his flashlight. He would stand there in the cold, shining the beam across the yard and out to the edge of the cornfield. But no matter how fast he moved, he never caught anyone. The whistling would always start again, behind him, right where he'd just been. The kids began to cry at night. Claire, who was only 6, started telling her mother there was a man outside her window. She said he wore a dark hat. She said he would stand there, even after the whistling stopped, and watch her until the sun came up. Linda tried to comfort her, but she knew something wasn't right. The whistling was too clear, too close. Sometimes it sounded like it was coming from inside the walls. After a week, Jim called the sheriff. A deputy came out and walked the property. He looked for footprints, cigarette butts, anything that would prove someone was out there. He didn't find a thing. He told Jim it was probably some kind of prank. He said it would stop on its own. But it didn't. One night, near the end of October, Jim decided he'd had enough. He loaded his shotgun, pulled on his coat, and waited by the front door. The whistling started, low and steady, moving from the kitchen to the kids' bedroom. Jim stepped outside, his boots crunching over dead leaves. He moved along the side of the house, keeping the barrel pointed in front of him. The air was so cold, his breath came out in clouds. He could hear his heart beating in his ears. When he reached the back corner of the house, the whistling stopped. For a moment, everything was still. Then he heard it again, louder than it had ever been, coming from right behind him. Jim spun around so fast he nearly dropped the gun. But there was nothing there. Just the darkness and the old trees swaying in the wind. He stayed outside the rest of the night. The whistling didn't come back until dawn. This time, it started in the cornfield and slowly drifted toward the house. He never saw anyone. He never saw footprints. After that, Linda begged him to leave. She said she couldn't take another night of it. So they packed up what they could fit in the truck and left the farmhouse behind. For weeks after they moved, they waited to feel normal again. But Linda said the whistling followed them. She heard it outside their new house, sometimes faint, sometimes so close she thought it was inside the walls again. It finally stopped months later, or at least that's what they said. But that wasn't the end of the story. Years later, in the late 90s, a man who bought that old farmhouse was interviewed by a local paper. He'd heard about what happened to the Turners. He said he never believed it. Not until the night he was out back, fixing the fence, and heard a low whistle drifting through the corn. He followed it all the way to the tree line. He said it felt like it was calling to him, pulling him into the dark. That was the last time anyone saw him alive. His truck was still in the driveway. His tools were left on the grass. And to this day, no one knows where he went. Just like no one ever figured out who or what was whistling in the night. She came home around 11:30 p.m. The front door was unlocked. The lights were off, but she figured her roommate had gone to bed early. It had been a long week. Nothing felt that weird at first, until she walked into the living room and realized nothing had changed. The TV remote was still on the coffee table. A jacket was draped over the couch. A mug with half-finished tea sat on a coaster like someone had just stepped away for a second. But her roommate was gone. No note, no call, no text. She never came back. And to this day, no one knows what happened. This is the story of Emily and Tara. 2 friends, 2 roommates, and one very real mystery that the internet still hasn't solved. Not after months of searching. Not after thousands of comments. Not even after what happened a year later. The first public mention of this case came from a now deleted user on a true crime forum in early 2013. She went by the handle Downtown Winter, and she started the thread with a question. What would you do if your roommate just vanished? What followed was a chilling play-by-play of the final hours she saw her best friend, Tara Wilson. They lived in a second-floor apartment near downtown Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a bad neighborhood, just busy. Loud at night, sure, but nothing crazy. They'd been living together for over a year, friends since high school. They had dinner together that Friday night, pizza and bad reality TV. Around 10:15 p.m., Emily, downtown Winter, got a text from Tara that just said, heading out for a bit, be back soon, lock up if you crash. That was it. Nothing out of the ordinary. She didn't say where she was going, and Emily didn't think to ask. Tara was the kind of person who'd walk down the street for candy at midnight. It didn't raise a red flag. But then she didn't come back. The apartment door was unlocked when Emily got home. Tara's keys were still in the dish by the front door. Her wallet was on the counter. Her phone was plugged in next to her bed, charging, untouched. There were no signs of struggle, no broken glass, no signs of forced entry. Her bed was still made. Her jacket was still draped over the back of the kitchen chair. It was like she had never left, but also like she'd never come back. The next morning, Emily called the police. At first, they told her to wait, said Tara was an adult. Maybe she just needed a break. Maybe she was blowing off steam. But that idea didn't hold for long when detectives pulled security footage from the building's main entrance. They saw something strange. Tara walks in at 10:49 p.m. She's alone, wearing a gray hoodie. No one follows her. She walks past the camera, up the stairs, and is never seen again. No footage of her leaving. Not through the front, not through the back. Not at all. The timestamp on the camera was checked and double-checked. The camera never glitched. There were no blind spots in the stairwell. Tara just vanished. Detectives went door to door in the building. No one saw or heard anything. There was no sign she'd left the apartment. It was as if she disappeared the moment she stepped inside. The case hit local news. Flyers were posted. A few Reddit threads popped up. And the deeper the internet looked, the weirder things got. One theory said Tara had been taken by someone hiding inside the apartment. That she walked in, locked the door behind her, and someone was already waiting. But the layout didn't support that. There weren't many hiding places. And again, no sign of a struggle. Another theory pointed to a hidden exit, an old maintenance crawlspace, a long-forgotten hatch. But no such passage was ever found, and police ruled it out after searching the building top to bottom. Then there was the final theory, that Tara had been lured out, that maybe someone had gotten into the building and convinced her to leave without her phone or wallet. But if that happened, why was there no footage? And why didn't she lock the door? The trail went cold. Emily moved out a few months later. The apartment sat empty for almost a year, until something strange happened. In May of the following year, nearly 12 months to the day after Tara vanished, her phone, still logged into her old Apple ID, pinged to life. A single tower caught the signal near a small town over 200 miles away in Kentucky. It didn't last long, just enough time to trigger a cloud backup. Then it went dark again. Police traced the ping, but found nothing. No phone, no Tara, no answers. The apartment building has since been remodeled. The old cameras are gone. The case file is still open. And the thread that started it all? The one posted by Downtown Winter? Deleted. Every comment, every image, every word. Wiped. Except for one cached screenshot someone managed to save. Just 4 words, posted 2 weeks after the phone pinged. I don't think she's gone. For months, she thought the house was haunted. She thought maybe the pipes were old, or maybe she was just hearing things. Small sounds, little taps in the walls. A cough that seemed to come from nowhere. A shadow moving just out of sight. At first, she tried to ignore it. She told herself she was being paranoid, that living alone made her imagination run wild. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. Her name was Claire. She was 29. She had just moved into a small bungalow on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, just an old place with creaky floors and drafty windows. But it was hers. A fresh start after a messy breakup, a chance to live on her own. The first sign that something was wrong was a carton of eggs. One morning, she opened the fridge and saw the carton sitting in the wrong spot. 2 eggs were missing. She thought maybe she was tired and forgot she'd used them. A few days later, she found the peanut butter jar open on the counter. No spoon, no crumbs, just the lid sitting next to it. Then things started to go missing. A pair of socks she swore she had just folded. A half-full box of crackers. A small kitchen knife. She told her mom about it over the phone. Her mom said maybe she was stressed. Maybe she was sleepwalking. So Claire let it go. But then the noises started. Soft footsteps above her bedroom at night. A dragging sound along the ceiling. The low, rasping cough that seemed to come from the vents. One night, she was lying in bed, reading, when she heard it clear as day. A cough, followed by the sound of something shifting. Something heavy, right above her. She called a friend to come over and look around. They checked the attic hatch. Nothing. They checked the locks on the windows. All closed. Her friend left that night thinking she was imagining things. But Claire knew she wasn't. She started locking her bedroom door. She stopped using the back entrance. She kept a hammer by her nightstand. Weeks went by. The sounds didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. Late at night, she'd hear breathing through the vents. Sometimes she'd hear a whisper she couldn't make out. She started sleeping with the TV on, just to drown out the noise. Then one morning, she noticed something that finally made her call the police. She was getting dressed for work when she glanced up at the ceiling vent across the room. And she froze. Behind the thin slats, in the dark, she saw something that made her stomach drop. An eye, wide open, staring right at her. For a moment, she couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then she ran outside and called 911. When officers arrived, they searched the attic. Nothing. They checked every closet, every cabinet. Nothing. But one of them noticed that the vent where she'd seen the eye had a narrow duct that led into a crawl space under the floorboards. It was barely big enough to fit a grown man. When they pulled open the hatch to the crawl space, the smell hit them first. Sweat, rotting food, stale air. They shined their flashlights inside, and there he was, curled up on an old sleeping bag, thin, dirty, holding the missing kitchen knife. He didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just stared back, blinking in the light. They pulled him out and put him in handcuffs. His name was Daniel. He was 37, a drifter with no family and no job. He had been living under Claire's house for almost a year, coming up through the vents when she left for work, stealing just enough food to survive, watching her while she slept. He'd learned her schedule. He knew her habits. He said he never planned to hurt her. He just liked feeling like he belonged somewhere, like he was part of her life. The police found wrappers, water bottles, and a notebook filled with scribbles, page after page of her name, written over and over again. Claire moved out the next day. She never went back. To this day, she says she still can't fall asleep without checking every closet, every vent, every shadow. And when people ask her why she didn't leave sooner, she always says the same thing. She wanted to believe it was just the house, because the truth was much worse.